This is going to be a film study that focuses on the quality of coverage that the Seattle Seahawks defense has put out there in 2025, regardless of who has been on the field in the secondary or at the safety position. Multiple guys have rotated in and out. Devin Witherspoon just came back in their Week 9 win over the Washington Commanders. I've got 5 coverage plays to analyze here, 3 of which are from that win on the road against the Commanders. I've talked about a couple of these plays, to be honest with you, in a Devin Witherspoon video, so forgive me for that, but I'm trying to present what I perceive to be a very highly coordinated, professional, and elite secondary group, pretty much no matter who's been on the field. Certain guys have shuffled in and out. This is, in my opinion, an example of what Seattle does from a communication standpoint pre-snap, and then how they just do an amazing job of passing off routes post-snap. Running back's going to go out into the flats. Watch how Ernest Jones IV and Nick Emmanwori push off these routes. Essentially, this reminds me really of a basketball concept whereby John Chaney played a matchup zone at Temple and for years would get to the NCAA tournament and take out some high-level team in the first or second round because they had not seen a defense as connected, physical, and fast as his. In this case, Jaden Daniels ends up scrambling. We're focusing on these 2 defenders initially as Jaden Daniels looks to the bottom side of our screen, the right-hand side of his offense. In addition, like I talked about in the Witherspoon video, he's identifying the vertical route and matching that as well. Nothing is available for Jaden Daniels for either one of these routes where he looked initially. Emmanwori is staying high, meaning he's not coming down on top of that route in the flats and leaving space open over the top of him, or allowing the running back to turn upfield and run a wheel. In this case, the quality of Seattle's coverage didn't result in a sack or anything like that. It's another 4-man rush stunt. Uchenna Nwosu is trying to run a pick on this left guard with Leonard Williams late, looping all the way around after engaging the guard, looping all the way around. It doesn't, quote, work as far as getting a sack on Jaden Daniels. Remember, all screen to our right, you had the running back push the flats, and I suspect that that's what made Ernest Jones move in such a horizontal nature. I'm talking about the running back release here and him essentially matching that, as opposed to the running back crossing his face, which would oftentimes lead to some type of route emanating from the other side. He wouldn't have to push as far to our right or his left-hand side of the defense. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense to you guys. Jaden Daniels looking to that side, nothing developing, like I said. And you got the 4-man rush scheme, pushes him out of the pocket. I think he scrambles for 7 yards. The point for me is that through the 4-man rush scheme, yes, Seattle was able to utilize 7 players in coverage, but it's how connected they are and how they move together, in sync, if you will, that essentially almost adds another half a player or even a full player, giving them 8 in coverage and 4 on the pass rush, which doesn't really work mathematically on a football field. So this route is one that possibly could be open if you're throwing the ball. And I think what you've got to do against this Seattle defense, in my opinion, after having seen Mike Macdonald for 2 years in Baltimore and now second season in Seattle, is you've got to throw the ball before people are open. You've got to throw it to a spot where they're going to be open. It's 4 over 3 to the trip side, meaning that the tight end motioned across, essentially creating a trip set to the downside of our screen, and then the running back releases there as well. So it functionally becomes, what I refer to as 4 to a side post-snap, because you got 4 routes all on the bottom side of our screen. Deebo Samuel's bringing his route into the middle, of course, could be matched by the safety, and I think you see an example of those guys communicating to each other about the routes. Bryant is definitely looking in that direction, and as soon as he sees Samuel starting in his direction, I think he's telling this safety, hey, stay there, I'll take over 3, Samuel, and then you can deal with the other 2 routes that are down to your side of the field. Emmanwori also supreme level of awareness, trying to fit underneath of this. I think he just has an understanding, I think they all do, in fact, because of the way that they're taught. They just have an understanding of zone structure. Not that these guys can't play man. I reject that certain players on the team are zone players or man players. In my opinion, guys have relative strengths, yes. But Mike Macdonald, the way that he teaches things and the way that the rest of the staff does, Aden Durde and the position coaches, I think they're getting the most out of their players, whether they're playing man or zone. And it's been the case all year. This one in the blowout win at home against the Saints, I think you'd kind of call this easy mode. Ernest Jones IV is going to get a pretty deep drop in the middle of the field. You got 3 receivers to the bottom side, the left-hand side of the Saints offense. You're getting essentially similar concept to what I just showed you against Washington, except instead of the number 3 receiver kind of sitting down, where Deebo Samuel did on the last play, he's essentially going to run a vertical right into the boundary side safety. There's no work at all for the defenders at the top side of the screen. It's Josh Jobe and Drake Thomas, the boundary side defenders. As an aside, I did a video on the boundary side coverages where I focused on these 2 guys. When I say there's no work, there's no routes emanating, at least right now, as far as a chip and delayed release. Initially, I think Rattler is looking in here to Olave, again, running that route to the opposite side of the field. In my opinion, it's possible that the Saints were expecting a different coverage here. This is the route that Rattler targets. As I think that Jones did a really nice job of passing Olave off. In terms of passing guys through zones, I think, they communicate at a really high level. They seem to be on the same page when doing so, whether it's a linebacker, a nickel DB, a safety, or an outside corner, number 1. And number 2, they're all athletic. They're athletic enough to actually be able to move in one direction with a receiver, in this case Olave, and then come back to the downside of the screen for us, the right-hand side for Ernest Jones IV. It's almost an interception by Kendrick over the middle on a late developing dig. The activity level of these guys, the ability to stay connected and in tune with each other and communicate the routes, I think it's about as good as it gets in the NFL right now, particularly in zone/match structures. A straight zone coverage, if you ask me, here on the road against Arizona, who, of course, they'll rematch this Sunday. Again, you've got boundary side coverage with Thomas and Jobe, 2 guys who, perhaps were not a big part of the plan coming into 2025, but have certainly exceeded all of those expectations. So Kyler Murray looking to the downside of our screen, his left, into the boundary. And I think you've got a really good example of quarter, half, or cover 6. Jobe is going to push out to the flats. Up at the top side, I think you've got 1/4 defenders, and then a half-field defender, Julian Love, who appears to be communicating to the top side field safety, Bryant, much in a similar fashion as we just saw on the previous play against the Commanders. As soon as this tight end starts working in that direction, you can see Love start to communicate. Who knows how much those guys can hear? Actually, in front of thousands of people, it could just be visual confirmation for the coaches that they're recognizing things, because that's a real dynamic as well. In any case, Kyler Murray ends up getting sacked. It happened really fast, but the coverage reaction, that's the whole point. The coverage reactions for Seattle, very reminiscent of Baltimore in 2023, whereby anything that was your first or second read, totally taken away. And it's not all just dependent on staring at the quarterback, in my opinion. Got great eyes, well-trained, and then able to play with leverage that supports the other defenders. Finally, this is, of course, the interception by Okada. I covered this in the Witherspoon video that I put out on Wednesday night. It's a spectacular call. The willingness to bring a corner on a 3rd and 15, in this case Witherspoon, and the design element of it. So basically, Thomas is going to be taken over by the running back here. And then the edge defender up top, I think, is Lawrence. He's going to go upfield. And what that does is it just opens up the B gap for Witherspoon to fit underneath. It's a really, I don't want to say dangerous coverage. It looks like 3 deep, 3 under, 2 deep. Sometimes it's 2 deep, 3 or 2 under, 3 deep, however people want to call it. It's a very risky scheme in my mind, personally, in my experience with it. But in any case, you see the payoff. Number 1, Witherspoon blitzes because it's an unpredictable blitz. A boundary side corner going through the B gap. There's a football up in the air floating. It's, of course, the wonderful interception by Okada. The reason for putting or packaging these plays in this particular order is Seattle, at a time and place of its choosing, can bring pressure, and the guys on the back end can know, hey, the ball could be up in the air because the quarterback is not expecting this. Basically, in this dynamic against Washington on Sunday night, 4-man rush, 4-man rush, 4-man rush, and then all of a sudden on a 3rd and 15, they bring 6. The design of it, in terms of Ernest Jones IV, he is mugged up on the line of scrimmage, so they have to account for him. You have rushers for all 4 of the interior gaps, the 2 A gaps and the 2 B gaps. Jones will drop out, number 1. Number 2, Leonard Williams occupies the right guard and the center. You can see Thomas being pass pro'd by the running back, and Witherspoon runs through the open B gap, gets a clean quarterback hit, takes Daniels to the ground. It's a beautiful scheme. It's easy to appreciate. I think some of the coverages are maybe more challenging to possibly understand, for myself included. There's times where you don't know, what the heck are they reading that gets them to the football so quickly. I'm willing to just accept that, there's times where Mike Macdonald and his staff have successfully fooled the opposing team's quarterback. So we shouldn't be frustrated with ourselves that we can't understand it either. Even if we get the benefit of time, 24 hours later, 48 hours later, or even 3 weeks later, they are presenting complexity. But from a player standpoint, for the guys in the secondary, inside linebackers, etc., it's actually quite simple. They've been taught pattern match schemes from the beginning, as opposed to being taught a zone structure as their base coverage or a man structure. They've been taught pattern match and how to recognize and react to routes in different coverage structures. And then we're just seeing that manifest itself on a weekly basis. Am I saying that I think they're going to go 14-3 or 15-2? I don't know, but there's no reason to expect a significant drop-off from this defense from a coverage standpoint. Those guys are spectacular at matching routes. They appear to be communicating on a play-by-play basis immediately after the snap as routes develop down the field. And then everyone is athletic, and in the case of Ty Okada, as illustrated here by this picture, can make a play on the ball. I would look for more interceptions as the season goes on. I would look for more opportunities to get turnover-worthy plays. Again, very reminiscent of the Baltimore Ravens defense in 2023, where over the course of the season, things were refined. If they were at 92% efficiency in terms of execution in week 4, it became 95% in week 8. It became 97 or 98% in week 10, 11, and 12. That's what Seattle looks like right now to me. It's very easy to draw that comparison, number 1, because of the Mike Macdonald connection. Number 2, it could just be my projection. I'm a person who watched that season from a Ravens perspective and is now intentionally trying to focus on the Seahawks defense as well. And it looks quite similar to me, but that could be, the pivot point could be me and my desire to see it work out, for Seattle in the same way from a defensive standpoint. But it looks like a high-quality operation. The teaching of it, I can only imagine, must be exquisite by Macdonald, Durde, and the guys in the coverage back end. In any case, I appreciate you guys' time. I recognize that I have broken down each of these plays in separate videos. I tried to package them together to just give you guys a little bit more insight, perhaps, in how connected these guys are, how they communicate well, and that's why I tried to, illustrate players pointing to each other. Of course, we can't hear what they're saying, but I'm sure that they are giving short, quick descriptors, in, cut, hi, whatever. Oftentimes, the words are pre-installed by their coaches, and in practice, you want to hear them as much as possible without the ball even being thrown at times. Out there on the field with thousands of people cheering madly or being loud, perhaps, you may not actually hear the words, but the coaches see the body movement. They see the pointing by one player or the other, and they understand that their players are reacting the way they've been taught to. I think the instruction is high level, and that's why I expect it to continue in the future. In any case, this is yet another video on the Seahawks defense. You can expect many more because, like I said, I don't think the production or the quality is going to drop off. Appreciate you guys' time.